Hey, Mike here from Arcadia Permaculture. It is the middle of February and it is real cold, and that's got me thinking about summertime. And this past summer, we went to visit Bea Hessler at Natural Themes Farm, which is a native plant nursery close to Frankford, Ontario. And they also do some 3 to 4-ish season vegetable gardening as well. Learned a ton on this tour. Bea is a wealth of knowledge, and especially very much felt her philosophy on farming. So we thought we'd share this tour with you of Natural Themes Farm from the start of August, which is a lot warmer and getting us geared up for the coming growing season. So hope you enjoy it.
Natural Themes. It's a native plant nursery that has also dabbled in market gardening. Yeah, so I'm Bea and this is Dan. And yeah, just exploring the whole act of unlearning and redoing. I think that's the trick. Unlearn everything that you were taught is not necessarily the way it should be.
Yeah, I think Masanobu Fukuoka talks a lot about that of
Mm.
do nothing farming.
Oh, no, there's a lot of truth in that. Holy dang. Look at the beautiful forest, and the meadows. They're doing everything on their own. As soon as you get in there and start to disturb, that's when you end up with endless problems, more and more work. It's working with what you have. It's working with the flow. You can work with the flow and forget everything people told you. Forget what it says in the book. Just do it. And there is no failure. The only failure is when you become arrogant and says, I will conquer this. I will get rid of the weeds. Right? You don't. So this is we moved back to the farm in 2008. And this is the farm where I grew up. And I brought the nursery here and put up a greenhouse. And then I walked inside it in October and I said, why are we buying salad greens? It makes no sense. So I started growing salad greens for the winter for us and fine-tuned it. At the beginning I hung pop bottles full of water, hoping that they would hold enough heat. But eventually I came up with this kind of plan where you grow in bed, put wires across every so often, right? Stretch blanket over it. This is, I'm talking now December, January, February. Stretch a blanket over it in the evening and take it off during the day because it does get warm enough. Well, then the problem was the ground would freeze. So I got a 115-watt heating cable, put it under some patio stones, and this keeps the ground just above freezing. Put the blanket over it and you can grow greens all winter without heating the greenhouse.
So you have just one row of
Yep.
a heating cable.
Well, one going up to here, and the other one going up to here from that end. And then I have heating cables down the center of those, but now I'm turning all this into native plants. But that's all it takes. You can have salad greens, fresh salad greens all winter.
Yeah, and we've had some of your farm share
There you go.
salad greens
Yeah.
long after. So just starting experimenting with seasoning. So we're doing some cold frames this year,
Yeah.
just straw bales and old windows. But
That's all it takes.
we're also mulling over a greenhouse option because that season extension of,
Yeah.
you know, especially here
So
to.
all you need is those hoops, double plastic, the double plastic, so you have the dead air layer in between.
Hmm.
12-volt fan to separate the two layers of plastic, and yeah, that additional insulation, and you can grow kale, lettuce, Swiss chard, spinach, lettuce, beets, carrots, uh, celery, lots of different herbs, all winter, fresh whenever you want it.
And
So,
like this amount of space, it looks like it's about what 30 foot beds by 2 foot.
yeah, well, yeah, this is like a 5 feet altogether.
Okay.
This is my stepping stone, as well as heating, right? It absorbs heat also during
Hmm.
the day, and then slowly releases it at night.
And you would have 3 of these beds across the greenhouse, and that's, you know, how much does that produce as far as feeding yourselves and then.
Yeah, in the dead of winter, don't expect to be able to sell, but certainly by March the 1st you can. Yeah, because the days are getting longer, right?
Hmm.
So the longer the days, the more heat you're able to trap in here. Yeah.
It must give you a pretty big jump on the
Huge
season
jump.
with your kale and your Swiss chard and.
Huge jump. And this year, because I don't have a lot of time to spend in the garden, I put peppers and tomatoes and eggplants inside, and that extends our season until November, right? Easily.
Yeah, it's got us beat.
Yeah, well, it's playing with, it's keeping your ear to the ground, basically, and tuning into what happens normally and understanding microclimates and not fighting, just working with. And if people would just learn to work with, then I think it would solve a lot of problems and certainly a lot of stress. Yeah, so anyway.
And we were talking this spring. So you're sort of at the bottom of a hill, and you're sort of, you can feel the frost roll through on in late spring and early fall. So you're not exactly ideal. And we're Canada Zone 5, maybe the colder part of Zone 5. So not exactly ideal growing conditions for year round, but.
But no, it's ideal because you
Yeah.
just make it ideal. It's good for everything else. You look at nature and you say it grows well, so why am I not doing well? It doesn't make sense. So if a weed grows well, so will something else. As long as you understand that you're trying to grow a tropical plant, you don't expose it to frost. You know, or at least have frost blankets. But otherwise, all of these can take -10 easily. No problem.
And are these overweight? So are these? I guess the lettuces and stuff would be,
I just
and wild
planted
arugula
those
would be.
because I still do some orders, but some of these are still from last year. All the kales, broccoli, some of the Swiss chard is still from last year. I'm just keep cutting it back. Yeah.
So how long will say a kale plant run for?
Oh, I have kale and the other greenhouse that's really big and rough looking. It's like 2 years old.
Really?
Yeah, I don't, and the other thing is, allow things to go to seed. The arugula you see here all came from seed. I bought special varieties of arugula, and they don't work out, but boy do they ever work out, the wild arugula.
Yeah.
Just
We've got a little wild arugula and
Yeah.
we've had trouble getting it to take a little bit, just planting it at the wrong times, or.
Yeah.
So we're starting it inside and about to plant it out, but we had one little patch that did survive, and like one plant came back, and
Yeah.
we've seen it before in other gardens where it
Yeah.
just
Takes off.
we'll be swimming in it next spring.
Yeah, don't weed too much. People weed too much. They get all freaked out, you know. The garden has to look good, straight lines, weed, weed, weed. I'm a proponent of let the weeds be, pull them when you want to plant. And it loosens the ground, and in the meantime they're doing a job. They're holding the soil, providing habitat for wildlife. The garden looks pretty rough, but it works.
And so this was the beginning. This is your first greenhouse.
This was the first greenhouse, and then because I said, why aren't we trying, to grow our own vegetables, didn't work out the first year because I thought I had to heat it. I had a propane heater, disaster. Then I put in a kerosene heater, a real disaster. I had to change the plastic; it all turned black.
Oh.
The pressure difference, right? Anyway, then I said, never mind. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And it worked. People think that you have to constantly heat things. No, you don't. Just work with cold hardy stuff and you're good to go.
So choice of varietals and saving seed, I guess. Takes something that's already pretty close and helps it to adapt to.
Yeah, and the native plants work well with this because if you don't have the wild plants to attract the pollinators, then you won't have as much fruit. You need to have a balance, and I know that Soil and Crop is trying to get farmers to do more of this, but they have a very strange way of getting people to do native plantings, round up several times and till and weed control but you don't need that. You're just, every time you disturb the soil, you're disrupting an entire ecosystem, an important one for anybody who works with the soil. Let it be. And I can show you what happened in the meadow. You want to go to the meadow?
Love to.
Okay, let's go and see the meadow. That was another thing that fell through. Big failure. But there really is no failure, is there? That's a myth. So is success.
Yeah, we didn't fail at growing big fat chickens. We succeeded at growing little skinny chickens.
Oh, good.
And you, so you grew up in the area, right? Just
I grew up here
right,
on the farm.
yeah, right across the road.
Yeah, this was the place I romped. These were the fields that we did use for market gardening. Were fields that we never used as a kid growing up because they weren't that good for agriculture. But you can find pockets of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Pockets of sandy loam, pockets of heavy clay, pockets of muck. Just use them. Anyway, this is a big order that fell through in 2008. And I took all the stock. I asked my son to plow this field and the upper field and cultivate it a couple of times so that I could, plant the stuff. It was used for hay before, so there were no shrubs growing in it. So then I had these beautiful little parcels. Oh, looked like a graveyard, people said, with little signs, these are the Coreopsis lanceolata and so on. Well, the next year, a little trails, all nicely chipped. The next year, the annual weeds came up. They must have been sitting in the ground for 20, 30 years, and finally they had their day, right? Because they got the light. And it was just covered in pigweed and ragweed and lamb's quarter and annual grasses, and I started weeding and I just threw in the towel. Said, okay, that didn't work out. The following year, the perennial weeds were coming in. So I'm using weeds as quotation marks here, right? It's just an unwanted plant in a certain place. And I said, oh well, whatever happens, happens. So if you're looking here now, the stuff I planted finally came true. Look at all the coneflowers and the salt indigo and the grasses. And we've got the non-natives. You still have the old alfalfa. We've got the wild carrot, the Queen Anne's lace, but you also have the leotris, the blazing stars, and echinacea, all the different coneflowers, wild onions, all coming up everywhere here. This was all my excess stock that fell through, the order that fell through. It took a few years, you just have to have patience. And I didn't do anything. I didn't burn, I didn't put any Roundup, just left it. Patience.
Which is a tough thing to do, you know, in farming and gardening, and
Oh, it's tough.
you want to measure results and by the season, but
And that's why people tend to constantly overwork stuff instead of just going with the flow. And I'm just learning the lessons the hard way. My things falling through for me, seemingly, but then in the end they work out.
so can you tell me about your sort of plant holding systems here? What's the
Oh yeah, this is
design here?
a tree and shrub nursery. I pot them up, and then for the winter, well, or even now, I line this with old plastic in a shingle way. So this is the upper side, upper end obviously, so gravity pulls the water down. So they sit like this, so the water runs down, and we minimize the amount of watering. And for the winter, we put in mulch, and that keeps the roots from freezing.
And that lets you keep them in pots and keep them outside without
Yeah.
without damaging the seedling.
Yeah. And then snow on top is another blanket, right?
And you're able to water just by filling the trench, or
No,
like pouring into
go and water every pot.
Okay.
But the water doesn't escape.
Mm-hmm.
To minimize the amount of water.
And so when you do tree seedlings, are you planting seeds directly into the pot, or are you starting them somewhere?
If I plant by seed, I put them in trays, and from there into small plugs, bigger plugs, and then
in pots.
A lot of this is started as bare root that I bought from another nursery.
Okay.
A lot of the people who come here have already done their reading, their studying. Yeah, I will occasionally get someone who says, I want the Pocahontas or something, you know, of the penstemon. I said, no, that's a cultivar. We have only the native plants, and then once in a while one shows up that's different than the others.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the ones they pounce on for cultivars.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The
it's
sporting
a
or whatever they call it.
Of getting people to rethink what the garden is for. It's not just eye candy. It's to help wildlife, and to actually celebrate a hole in the leaf. I mean, gypsy moth was a little bit over the top, but
Got to have a leaf to have a hole in it.
I know. But really, if milkweed is chewed down, you celebrate because the monarch caterpillar is there, right? Here's a dotted mint, and you can see the wasps in it.
Oh yeah.
And these are really good wasps to have in the garden because they prey on other insects, the pests, and paralyze them for food for their young. So
And what plant is this, sorry?
that's dotted mint.
Dotted mint. Does it spread like regular mint?
No.
No.
Yeah.
People like to argue about what native means as far as native plants.
Mm-hmm.
What's your view on it? What do you consider? What makes the cut for being a native plant?
So for here, it's that it's North American, Eastern North American or even the prairie environment, and hardy to the soil. Because there is nothing native here anymore. The climate is not what it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's more Carolinian. The more extremes in temperatures. If we see the wildlife from the south come here, clearly they also need the plants that they lived off further to the south. So like the giant swallowtail, I'm sure you've seen the black and yellow, really big swallowtail. I mean, it needs the citrus, and the only citrus you can get here is the prickly ash. Or if I grow a hop tree, which I do, then they consume it just before the leaves fall off, which is perfect. They already have the buds. Next year they put on new leaves, no problem. So it's a matter of, again, not trying to restore. Go with what's actually happening. Evolve with what's happening. Evolve the way you see things and do things. It's really important. Keep as little disturbance as possible. Yeah.
So as far as you said when you first started out that the native plant nursery didn't do particularly well as a business.
No.
What's changed?
The people's attitudes. Before, the first comment I got was, "What's a native plant? Well, you go and dig these up at the side of the road and pot them up and sell them." And I said,
Which
no.
I do some of that, but
No, most of what you see on the side of the road is non-native, first of all. It's ensuring a place for native plants. Some people thought it was tobacco, sweetgrass, and sweet sage. No, that's not. They're plants indigenous. So it was a lot of education. And I went and did a lot of talks. But then it was a matter of, what will the Joneses say? So, or the municipality has bylaws.
mm-hmm.
That's changing. The pandemic helped. Yeah. So nobody could come and snoop in somebody else's yard. They weren't allowed. Right? And the relatives that were always giving you a hard time, well, they had to stay away. It gave people a window, gave people a chance to really stop and think. It's a good thing.
And do some research and
Do research and just understand that it doesn't take much to make a huge difference. If everyone in a city or a town would have like even a 10 by 10, 100 square feet in pollinator plants, can you imagine? The city would just become vibrant with butterflies, bees, and birds, and we'd see the solution happening in front of our eyes without thinking about carbon sequestration and putting some special things up in the atmosphere. So we can all do a lot just by letting things be, putting a few things in and letting them be.
yeah, as they say, nature knows how to do it. It's just up to us to.
For billions of years, nature knew, and then we came along and we knew better.
Yeah. But we can be part of the solution as much as we've been part of the problem too.
We can be part of the solution, but without fighting nature. How's that?
Yeah, I think about that every time I pull a weed.
Yeah, well, this is it. The weed has a place.
Yeah.
Every little creature has its place, but you try to control things biologically by facilitating biological controls, like the wasps. They'll go around now after drinking that nectar and going and paralyzing caterpillars and spiders or whatever to feed their young.
And we have a lot of bugs. I don't think I've seen those kind of wasps in our garden, so there'll be some of that coming with us.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Oh, these are Canadian Canadian cacti.
Canadian cacti.
Yeah, the ones at the front are the plains prickly pear. The ones in the middle are the eastern prickly pear, that's native Ontario. And I have a few fragilis here. Boy, they keep flying around. They're like little birds. Cat walks through here, takes them away.
Oh, little tiny cacti. Wow, I did not know we had such things. And the center ones are
The eastern prickly pear. The
cool.
Ontario cactus. Between all the different predatory insects that are here, it solved the problem. So it's a matter of having the patience to let things unfold as they will. I have the luxury of doing that because this is a retirement project. I know there are some people who have to pay the bills and that sort of thing, but doing things this way, I always was able to fill 3 tables at the market with lots of produce.
Mm-hmm.
And I pretty much did everything on my own. So my husband was working full time as a consultant, and this was just what I did. So if there's a space available, then this is where I would plant the next thing. This is the cable. I'm taking it out now. You can see what it looks like. This is the heating cable that goes under stones. 115 watts. I think it cost $60, and it gives you 24 feet, I think. And if you have it under stones, the stones hold the heat, and this does not freeze, and you can harvest here all winter.
And how much does it cost to run?
Hardly anything, because it's on the thermostat too. So you can put your hand on the stones, and it doesn't feel warm, but it doesn't feel really cold either.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see the weeds are where I haven't planted any vegetables. The weeds have taken over there. But that's okay, because when I'm just going to turn that into a natural area with wildflowers. When we first started this, we used straw instead of fabric. The problem with that is we brought in all kinds of new perennial weed seeds, like bindweed and sow thistle, and we had Canada thistle here before, but we brought in even more. So the fabric works well. I don't even move it at the end of the season. I just move it enough to bring my digging fork in. That's my main tool. I don't like to use a tractor if I don't have to. Loosen the soil and plant the new stuff in, and then bring the fabric right up to it. That way I did not disturb the soil community in that area. I minimized any disruption. And here where the cabbage is, we had garlic. As soon as the garlic was being pulled, I planted the cabbage. I have some plants that were just and so I grew up in work ethic of hard work is really important. It's not. Yeah, we just started. I think yesterday we got. Working effectively is important.
And laziness is the mother of invention.
That's right. I mean, really. I mean, not use a tractor because it's energy. Minimize the amount of energy you input, either fossil fuel or your own muscle, and everything will work out. It really does. I mean, a lot of people say you can't grow vegetables like that. Yes, you can. Yeah. The greenhouses were always bursting and stuff.
And is that a rosemary plant in there?
Yeah, rosemary. Can handle minus 12, so it does okay all winter.
Is that like a particular variety that can handle, or just all rosemary can handle?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm going to have to Get a close up of that.
We're gonna try.
Look at this rosemary walking down the middle of her beds. Oh my God. It's huge. And as far as how people can find websites, social media.
Yeah, naturalthemes.com. Yeah, we have two websites, one for the produce, one for the native plants, but we're slowly moving everything to the native plants with a little bit of produce. At least for now. There's always a possibility for change in the future, but naturalthemes.com will get you all the
Get you to
information
both.
you want, yeah.
And you have a sort of garden gallery where people can walk about and see the plants.
In spring we offered vegetable plants as well. Not sure we'll do it next year, but we'll always have those salad trays available. That went over very well. Beginning of March, so people can grow their own greens.
Awesome. And you're open 5 days a week?
Thursdays to Saturdays, 1 to 5, and Sundays, 10 to 4.
Well, thank you very much for opening your doors to us on your day off. And yeah, learned a lot, and there's definitely a lot of inspiration for the directions we'd like to go. And
If you ever have any questions, feel free.
oh, that's a dangerous invitation to make.
By email. I can wait until the evening. I speed up and I answer emails. There you go.
Sounds good. You have yourself a deal.